there's been so much good news in 6 months that like literally all these things haven't played out yet. It's just like buy the news, sell the, or, you know, buy the rumor, sell the news type of events where these things haven't taken place yet. I'd love for you to unpack this, you know, paradigm we're in right now.
Sure. So first things first, the news is irrelevant. Drop the news from your information diet. It's useless. So many people look and say, but there's so much good news. Why no price? And it's like, because
all the time.
No, totally. It is. And by the way, this is the default assumption. This is why financial media exists. Whenever a stock rips to the upside, it doesn't matter what happened. You'll go on, literally the financial media goes to their, like the lowest paid intern and goes, go and write a story on why Apple's down 3% today. And they'll be like, oh, it was the tariffs, or, oh, no, it was this, or it was the wind changed direction. They'll find some reason that is not the reason why these things happen, right? When you see it in the headline, it's been baked into the price for weeks and maybe months in advance. So you have to think about markets as a process, not a result. So a very good example of this, we saw in 2024, the ETFs went live in January. I think we opened the year about 40,000. We then sold off and everyone was like, oh, look, what a dud. And then we ripped to 73K. Now, following that period, we then had 8 months of chopping around above $1 trillion market cap. Really, really important phase, in my opinion. That like 50, 60, 70K, I called it chop solidation. That phase, very, very important in my book because it proved that Bitcoin is now $1 trillion plus asset. And I do believe that is going to be I would be amazed if we ever go back down below that level. If we do, it's a deep value zone. So, you know, anything can happen in the world. But my view is that that zone, we prove we're $1 trillion plus. Now we just have to work out how many trillion. So that's our floor from here. So with that as context, people are like, but why is there all this ETF demand and inflows and yet we're not going higher? So this whole concept of price suppression. Now, there's a whole lot of angles I can go down here. But the first one is there is a difference between your expectations of what should happen and what does happen, right? There is expectations and there is reality. Which one is more likely to be out of kilter? Your expectations because you think that the world should understand Bitcoin much sooner than they do, or the reality of the situation, which is that it just takes a shitload of money to move a multi-trillion-dollar asset. So, you know, people are, in my view, I think people's expectations are wrong and they expect the God candle. But then I just offer this very, very simple heuristic. Every single Bitcoiner I have ever spoken to, with zero exceptions, how many of your friends have you managed to convince? You can probably count them on half a hand, right? You just can't. So given that reality, the fact that you can't even convince your mum, your dad, your best friend to buy a Bitcoin, why on earth do you expect the rest of the world to work it out tomorrow? It's just not happening. It's just not happening. So getting your expectations correctly aligned with what is actually happening is important. Now, on the price suppression thing, it's a fascinating topic. It happens, right? There is campaigns to suppress a market for sure. However, I would be the way that I would frame this up. This is no different to any other market ever. I actually go so far as to say, like, if you're going to call it manipulation, every time you DCO, you also manipulate it. You're just not very good at it, right? So there's, in terms of your size and scale, if someone wants to suppress the price to the downside, someone has an incentive to blow them up on the upside. Everyone has derivatives. Everyone has futures. Everyone has spot. Everyone has options. It's not as if there's not the same amount of firepower on both sides. So this concept of price suppression, you can argue that, yes, big actors, if you're, for example, if you're a very, very large actor and you want to buy $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, what do you need to happen? You need $1 billion worth of people to sell right before it moons. So you need $1 billion worth of incorrect people. How do you generate incorrect people? I don't know, get Jim Cramer to say that you should buy this stock. Because when Jim Cramer says you should buy this stock, the lemmings in the room will go out and buy this stock because that's the best that they can. They outsource their thinking to Jim Cramer. Now Goldman Sachs could unload their stock on you, right? That's literally his job. It's to create the exit liquidity. So all markets require this. If you're a big actor, you want to buy $1 billion, sometimes you've actually got to sell to generate a bit of fear to then get people to sell to you. This is how markets work. So some people will call that market manipulation. I just call that markets. That is literally how they work. Now, probably even more important to this point, I do not believe that you need a central core 95% governing factor of market manipulation to explain why we're not higher. This is actually my core point. So let's accept that some form of market manipulation happens. My argument is that explains like single digit percentages of what's going on. I can just look at what's going on in terms of coins moving on chain, flowing in and out of exchanges. We are talking about tens of billions of dollars a day. Now, these aren't coins that just like, oh, some dude just bought them yesterday and he's just wash trading. No, these are coins that are 3 years old, 5 years old. They were bought at the bear market bottom. They were bought last cycle. They were bought 2 cycles ago. $100,000 has been, and I know several guys here in Sydney who they've been around for a long, long time. Lord knows how many coins they have. Lord knows how many coins they, if you've been around for a long time, some of these guys have got a lot. And they've been saying like 100K was their like stretch target, will never happen price. And here we are. Think about what they can do to upgrade their lifestyle. And everyone's like, but why would you sell? We're at 100K. It's like, because you bought it $100 and you got thousands of these things. If you were in their position, I'd probably sell a little bit too, because like you never have to worry about a single thing ever again. Go and live your life.
Yep.
So in many ways, I think the central pillar of your argument doesn't have to be that the market's being suppressed. There could be suppression happening, but there's also just a lot of selling. It's just a reality of the thing. So yes, it's a part of the market structure, but don't make it your central thesis. Don't build your personality around it. Like at the end of the day, your expectations are that big markets move much faster than they actually do. And once you can accept that the market actually just moves a lot slower, and then you actually start looking at some of the data and the way this cycle is behaving, it very quickly turns out that we're actually moving very much the same as we did in previous cycles. So what is actually incorrect is how quickly people think things should happen. It's happening almost dead on schedule from every previous cycle, but we're 100 times larger. I would actually go so far as to say that we are moving way quicker than I ever anticipated at this size. We're moving much faster than we should be. And yet people are screaming price depression because frankly, they're a bit greedy. That's like, if you really want to get down on the nuts and bolts, they're greedy and they think that the market's like an ATM and should just give them free money. It's not. The market will do its thing. It's going to be slow. It's going to be tedious. It's going to be boring. That's a really good thing. Slow, tedious, and boring means big money gets more comfortable with it. I said this in Bitcoin Soul too. If I got my old man to finally buy Bitcoin back in 2020, and believe me, I heard about all the ups and downs, particularly the downs, because he went through the bear market. He saw all the swings. The volatility freaked him out. I said, just sit tight. And then it would go lower. And he's like, how long do I have to sit tight? I'm like, just sit tight. Right now, every time I speak to him, he just goes, number go up, love it. Number go up, love it.
That's amazing.
For him, he is super comfortable now. So people have got to realize that this is what it looks like when big money actually comes on board. It's slower, it's steadier, but it doesn't go down as much, right? We've had a 30% correction twice. Back in 2017, we had 40 and 50% all the time. They were shorter, but they were much more severe. Now it's like you go down 30% and people think the world is over. So it's just this melding of expectations and reality.
Boy, there's so many things to unpack from that segment right there. Last thoughts. Where can people find you? What are you working on? Where do you like to send people?
Yes, so we've got a couple of things over at Check on Chain. The main one is, so we've got a charting suite, which, as I said, is totally free. We're doing a revamp in the background. That'll be hopefully live in the next couple of months. We've got a newsletter over at a Substack, checkonchain.com. So, I mean, look, what we basically do is twice a week. And people tell me all the time, like, that's just enough. They get through like 85% of it. Like, I feel like I've learned something every week. We do written and video. So every post is, 2,500 words and then about a half-hour video. It's basically me sharing my worked example of how I come to all my conclusions. We do market updates, masterclasses to understand how to actually interpret these metrics, but also just like explaining things like, hey, Bitcoin's really big. It's going to take a lot of capital to move it, and showing people in numbers a lot of the stuff we've talked about today, just demonstrating and showing the worked example of how I've come to these views. So the idea is to help people think through complex problems. And a lot of people have come to me and said, I'm sorry, but you destroyed Twitter for me because I now see through all the bullshit. And they go, it's so noisy. So there's a lot of people who are like, this is my world. I look, I'm like, oh God, Twitter's just tough because it's full of people who are engagement farming, not actually giving people an honest assessment of what's going on. And that's why people call me a bear. I'm not a bear. I'm just, and as you said, I'm an engineer. I'm realistic. I'm trying to keep things on the ground because that's where we live.
If you like that clip, then you definitely got to check out this next spicy clip. I think you're really going to like it. Come on, check it out. But if you want the full version, the full interview, then check that out over here. Come on, do it. I'll see you in there.